welcome to Intro to UX Design. Yeah, it's June 3rd, 2020. That's the date. Hi, my name is Christina. Oh, cool. Okay, so my name is Christina. Yeah, so as you might know, or maybe you don't know, I dropped out of computer science. Some fun facts about me. I'm also a hackathon enthusiast. I love to go to hackathons. And when I was in high school, I tried to start a streetwear brand. I pretty much failed, but yeah. So kind of like the boring stuff, but I'm the second year student at OCAD University. Like I'll be going there in September, and I'm from Canada, and I'm mainly working on projects with startups right now. So like my 9 to 5 is with the crypto trading startup, but on the side, I'm with like a food tech startup. So today we're going to talk about UX design. It's an intro to UX design workshop. So we're going to start with what is UX design, and then we're going to talk about why it matters, and then we're going to go over the design thinking process, and then we'll talk about like what it means to design today. Like given the current state of the world, what can we as designers do to combat systemic issues such as like racism and inequality? So first, what is UX? Nice. Wow. Web page layout. Bridging the gap between consumer and product. Oh, that's a user interface. How the user would interact with the product. Studying the user's experience and how you could improve their experience. Yeah, that's pretty good. I say UX is a bunch of different things. It's understanding people. It is, yes, it's UX, it's user experience design. You're right. It's also the interaction between humans and brands. Like a lot of you said, it's also a process. It's about solving product problems and adding delight to people's experience. So I would say that, like, this is my definition of UX design, but there's like many definitions out there. But UX design is basically the process of understanding people to solve their problems and add delight during any interaction that they have with a product, service, or brand. So one, it's a process. It's not just about the end result or what something looks like, but it's about understanding people. So understanding their behaviors, their motivations, their goals, and their needs. And once we understand people, we can better solve their problems. And not just that, but go beyond solving their problems and adding delight to them. And it's during any interaction that they have with a product, service, or brand. So it's not just screens, but it's the entire experience someone has with a product, service, or brand. That could be like from seeing an ad on Instagram, talking to an employee at a store, or like trying to return a product. All of these things are UX, even if you're like not looking at a screen. So UX is like very broad. I love this visual because it shows that UX is kind of like an umbrella that covers many disciplines. And chances are, if you haven't already, you will come across UX in some form in the future, because no matter what you do in the future, whether you're doing design or not, there's always going to be people and there's always going to be users involved. So something that I just wanted to clear up that I was really confused about in the beginning too is what's the difference between UX design, UI design, and product design? So while UX is more about more than apps and websites, when you hear these terms, like most of the time, it refers to designing digital products, but not always. So like UX, UI, and product design can all be referred to as can all be used in like designing products that aren't just mobile apps and screens, but in the industry, it's usually referred to like designing digital products. So what's the difference between these three? In real life, people with these job titles will likely share similar responsibilities, but there's definitely still a difference. And one thing that all three have in common is an understanding of user needs. But UX concerns the experience of a person using an interface to achieve their goals. It also usually considers experiences that users have with a brand that's outside of UI. UI is more visual. It involves visual elements of interfaces that a user encounters. So a pure UX designer will usually do more research and more testing to determine goals and like what problem to solve. And they usually, like a pure UX designer will just design basic sketches, while a pure UI designer will focus on making sure their UI represents brand and visual identity and accessibility guidelines. And a UX UI designer just does both. So then there's also the product designer. It's very similar to UX UI designer, like both UX plus UI. with more of a business aspect to it. So while a UX UI designer is a strong advocate for the user, a product designer advocates for the user and for the business. So a product designer might ask something like, does this experience align with where our product and where our business wants to be in 6 months? Whereas a UX designer might ask, how will this experience strictly benefit our usability problems and our users? So next, we're going to talk about why design matters. Why it matters? It pretty much affects everything. It literally affects everything. So one, it affects businesses. 1 in 3 consumers will leave a brand that they love after just one bad experience, and 92% of users will completely abandon a company after 2 or 3 negative interactions. And like when people have a good experience with a company, they tell their friends, and when they have a bad experience, they tell even more friends. So like one article that came out last year, it actually it was like a blind man, and he sued Domino's Pizza because their website wasn't designed for accessibility, and he couldn't order pizza with a screen reader. And he successfully sued them. So it was like really bad for their business and stuff. Wow, there's arrows. That's cool. All right. So, but more importantly, apart from businesses, it affects how people experience everyday life. Like pretty much everything you interact with on a daily basis is designed, but most of the time we just don't notice it. And a lot of the times, good design goes unnoticed. It integrates like so seamlessly in our lives that we don't notice it. And it's only when something is badly designed that we can start having problems and these things stand out. So this is one example, pill bottles. So let me know in the chat who uses it and what is its purpose. Does anyone know who uses storing pills? Yeah, that's a okay, that's cool. It's okay. Well, I mean, it shows that, okay, people who take prescriptions and contains and holds information about the drugs, shows the prescription. Oh, thank you. Wow, thanks for your answers. Oh, you guys were typing. I get it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm a slow typer. Well, you guys are not slow typers, but anyways, all right. So yeah, people with illnesses, making sure kids don't eat them by accident. True. Older people. People with medical illnesses, and the purpose of it is to store the pills. Basically, yeah, you got it. So the purpose is to store your pills so that you can take them, and almost anyone can use them. There's old people, young people, people with families, people with kids. So just looking at this, what do you think could be improved with the design? Bigger font? Yeah, I agree. It's kind of hard to read. Thanks, Carla. The spacing and the size of the text. Thanks, Emily. More focus on the name of medication and how often to use it. Liza, you good? Okay, wow, there's a lot of things, but yeah, okay. I'm not going to read all of them. It looks messy. I totally agree. Yeah, it looks messy. It's not organized. Anyways, so yeah, so one, it's hard to read what's actually important. The brand or the pharmacy is the biggest thing. And when someone's trying to take their medicine, they need to know like what they're taking and what the dosage is. And that's the actually important information, but that stuff is so much smaller and harder to read. 2, you have to keep turning the bottle to read it. So like you have this bottle and you're like rotating it, like trying to read around it. And then you get to the warnings and you have to like turn it like sideways again to read the do not take if you're, I don't know, I can't even read it because I can't read it. But yeah, and it's like black text on a dark red background, which makes it even harder to read with the low contrast. Another thing is that it's really hard to open. So for people with like osteoporosis or like weak wrists, yeah, it's very hard to open. Yeah, so like for most able-bodied and healthy people with great vision, these bottles are okay. Even though we can like recognize like so many kind of things that could be improved about these bottles, like we can still use them just fine. But lots of people like we were talking about people whose vision isn't that great, people who with weak wrists, people whose first language is not English. You factor in all these things, and it suddenly makes it's not easy to use for everyone. So this woman's name is Debra Adler, and she noticed that the design of these bottles after her grandparents accidentally took each other's medicine. It was really hard to read, and they both, like, her grandparents both have the same last name because, like, they're married. So they, like, mixed it up on the bottle and they took the wrong medicine. So she was a design student, so she designed a new like a new bottle called Clear RX. So one thing that is that I love about this bottle is that the instructions are clear. So what's biggest is the most important, and it's at the top of the bottle. Another thing is that, like, it says take 1 tablet by mouth 1 time daily, and, like, this wording was actually specifically chosen in a very, like, specific way. Like, you could say that sentence in many different ways. You could say, for example, take 1 tablet once a day, but they actually took special consideration to use the word daily, because the word once, like ONCE, like when you, it's the same spelling as 11 in Spanish. So, and there's a lot of Spanish people, so, or Mexican people who speak Spanish, so sorry. So yeah, so they use the word daily. Another thing is that you can see the name from above. And also, so if you see the rings at the bottom, it's purple. So they're actually color coded so that different members of the family, like you don't get it mixed up. And it's also easier to open for people with weak wrists. So I love this design, but what happened? Like, how come we don't see these designs everywhere? So one, they were designed for Target's pharmacy, but Target actually ended up selling their pharmacy to CVS. And CVS didn't want to make the switch because it would be too expensive for them. So people basically started petitions to bring them back, and they dug through their trash to reuse the bottles, but they still don't exist. As you can see, like, we don't really see them every day. But it just shows how there's often conflict between what's beneficial or easy for the business versus what's beneficial for users. So how do UX designers develop human-centered solutions? I love that bottle example because it's a great example of a human-centered problem-solving solution, but how do we apply this to digital products? So that's where the design process comes in. Also, like, as a side note, if anyone is interested in pursuing a career in design, like, when you're showcasing a work, most of the time, showing your process is actually more important than your final result, because you're showing the reasoning behind your decisions and how you approach problems and how you got to your result. But that's just like a side note. So anyways, if you Google design thinking or design process, probably something like this will come up. In my opinion, it's pretty confusing. Like, when I was starting out, I felt really overwhelmed. I was like, which one is the best one to follow? And the answer is, it doesn't really matter. There's no one way to approach design, and because every problem is unique and your constraints are unique too. And so sometimes you might need to skip a step, which is okay as long as you have a good reason. But the most important thing is knowing, like, why you're doing a step and what you're getting out of it. But fundamentally, like, these are the 5 basic steps that you'll see in some way or another during the design process. So sometimes it might look like this, or this, or this. So now I'm basically just going to do a very brief overview of each step and why we do it, and some examples of what a UX designer typically does during each step. And it's not going to be a complete list, but just so that you can, like, get an idea. So first, empathize. Empathize is about, the goal of empathizing is to be able to understand people and validate, like, any assumptions that we might have about them that relate to our product. So UX designers typically do interviews, one-on-one interviews with users to understand them. They look at trends in data to see how people behave, and, like, see if there's any, like, patterns with the behaviors and how people interact with their products. There's also field studies where people go into, where UX designers go into users' like natural habitat, and sometimes they ask them questions, sometimes they just observe them. There's also, like, structured focus groups where you bring in groups of people and discuss. And there's also market research where some of it is competitive analysis, like, for example, like looking at other, what else is in the market, like other competitors, and also more about understanding your customer. So the next step is about define. Define is about defining the right problem. So during your research, you'll probably, like, during the empathize phase, you'll probably realize that there are a lot of problems, but define is about figuring out what's most important. So, sorry. All right, so an affinity map is when people take, like, they write down all the insights in brief, like, notes that they get from their users and their data after the research, and then they start to group it. And sometimes they group it by common themes, or sometimes they group it by needs, motivations, behaviors, and they do this to kind of get an idea of what needs are most like prominent among people. Another tool is using a persona. So a persona is kind of like a fake person that you make up based on your data to kind of emulate your target user group that you're focusing on. And I think like an important thing when you're making persona is like, don't focus too much on like demographics, but it's like such as like race, age, height. Sometimes these things are important depending on the product, but most of the time a persona is more about like learning like what needs that they need to be done. So like people of all different demographics can share similar needs. And then a journey map is basically going through like the entire journey and interaction that people have with your product and their problem, and like trying to like going through, for example, like someone's experience of shopping for a computer, and then like when and then you're looking for like their thoughts and their actions and all of the like interactions they have with your brand, so that you can look for opportunities where you can intervene and maybe like help make their experience a little easier. The problem statement is really important. The most common type of problem statement is figuring out a how might we question, which I will go into later on in the workshop, but basically it just helps you frame your problem, and it usually has like a action, a subject, and an outcome to help you decide like which problem should we really focus on. Okay, so ideate, this is about exploring possibilities. So usually in the beginning of the ideation process, we want to encourage like blue sky thinking and like welcome any ideas, like no ideas like too out there. So we use user stories. User story, basically how thinking from the user's perspective of like what they want and why they want it, so that you can start coming up with ideas on how to solve that. Also in ideation, something that's really important is getting inspiration from other apps, because you know, you want to see what's out there, and also you don't want to make your app actually like too different, because it like when people are using it for the first time, it might be like confusing for them if it's too different from all the other apps that they've used before, and also like other people did their research too, so it's okay to take from that, just don't like plagiarize and stuff. Yeah. Task flow is basically just a brief diagram of flowing through like what a user would want to do, but like more specific like in your app. So for example, like if they land on this page and then they go to the search, but they use the search bar to look for something like more specific like that. And there's also sketching, where I mean, you know what sketching is. Okay, so the next phase is prototype. Prototype is actually building your solution. So you'll need an actual like viable and feasible product so that you can test it. So there's a lot of different variations of prototype. Sometimes you can even make a prototype with just like rough paper sketches and just start testing it, because the idea is just you want to see like what's valuable to your users, and you don't always have to like, it depends on what you're testing. Sometimes it might be like variations, so like you want to prototype different variations of one screen so that you can figure out which one you want to use. And there's also like, oh yeah, MVP, which is, so with this image, like I wanted to show that like your prototype should always be like trying to solve the one need of the user. Like if maybe you knew your final product was going to be a car, you wouldn't like focus all your energy on just making like one wheel. You like the primary purpose of a car is just to get someone from like one destination to another. So you would start with something like a skateboard, and then like through iterations it would maybe become a car. And there's also like interactive prototype, which is basically like how an app would work, but sometimes you're building the app, sometimes you're just designing it and making it flow. Yeah. Okay. So the final step is test, where the purpose of testing is to validate your solution to the problem through the prototype you just made. It's about gaining insights on whether it's valuable for users and seeing how they interact with your product. And you can learn whether to improve and learn like, does this actually solve your problem? So one example is a usability lab test. in which sometimes you'll be testing like a certain set of tasks. So this usually comes with like a script that you write for yourself, and then you ask the user to complete a certain set of tasks, such as like, how would you find a restaurant near you? And you don't like tell them anymore, but like you just watch them and try to observe if they like successfully do it or not. And you watch how they interact with the product. Second one is a preference test, just asking people what they prefer. Another one would be like a remote test. So in this picture, there's like eye tracking. That's kind of cool. But yeah, you can do testing remotely as well. There's also an A/B test where you're testing like a control and you're testing variations to see which one performs better. And then there's also like clickstream analysis, which analyzes the pages that users click on, so you can learn more about their behavior and how they used your product. There's actually a lot of overlap between testing and empathizing, because in both you're learning more about your users and you're using that to solve new problems. So it never really ends. It's a cycle. Like testing is related to research, and then you go on. Okay, so now we're gonna see the design process in action with Netflix. So I adapted this part from a product designer at Netflix. His name is Navin. He talked about their process designing the Netflix non-member homepage. So the Netflix non-member homepage is what their Netflix homepage looks like if you're not logged in, or if you like don't have a Netflix subscription. So Netflix does a lot of research about their customers and people who aren't their customers. And one of many methods is surveys. And so they ask people, what one thing would you like to know more about before signing up for Netflix? Can you guess what people said? Leave in the chat.
Yeah. Not different.
The price, true. What shows are available? Movie options, popular shows. Is it free? Okay, yeah. So yeah, most of what we're getting is like the price and like what's actually available on Netflix. So yeah, 46% of people actually said all movies and TV shows available. So yeah, you're right, most of you. Okay, so this is our definition of the problem. Navin said that this is basically their hypothesis, that showing people what our content is before they sign up will make them more likely to sign up, which is what they got, because more people said that they wanted to see what movies and TV shows were available before signing up for Netflix. So I decided to reframe this as a how might we question, just to like you remember those back from the design process, just to illustrate. So how might we present available movies and TV shows on the Netflix homepage to increase signups among potential users? So how might we questions usually have like an action, a subject, and an outcome. So you have your action, which is how might we present available movies and TV shows, and then you have the subject, which is potential users, and then you also have the outcome, you want to increase signups. And so I guess you could probably go a little more specific with the subject, potential users, but I mean, it's okay. So for ideation, they probably had a lot of different ways that they could show the content on the homepage, but eventually they prototyped a few different versions, and they ran some A/B tests. So just to refresh your memory on how the A/B test works, you have the control experience, which is the original homepage, and then you have different variations, and you test them among people to see which one performs better. So this was the control experience. This was their this was the actual Netflix homepage at the time, and this is just they made many different prototypes, but just for the narrative, like this is an example of one of the prototypes that they made for the A/B test. So in the example one, like you could see like the shows that were on Netflix, and you could scroll through them. You could like look at the information for a movie, but you couldn't actually like watch the movie without starting your free month. So after they did some testing, what did people say? People were saying, yes, this is exactly what I need. This is what I want. This is what I want when I'm choosing to get a Netflix subscription or not. But what do people do? So they internally went into like sort of like shopping mode. They were like they became like bogged down. They were looking for a specific piece of content or a title that said to them, yeah, like I want to watch this, so I'll sign up for Netflix. So what happened? Actually, after like the results of all the tests, every time the control was the control experience, like the original one, without all the content, that was the winner. So what people were doing was obviously very different from what they said. What does this mean? Observe what people do and not just what they say. Like, we can't just take what people say at face value, but we need to observe what they do. So what happened with the Netflix homepage, this is what it ended up looking like, because they still wanted to listen to what their users are saying, and which is like they wanted to know the content that's on Netflix. But after more testing, this is what they came up with. So it shows you what's popular on Netflix depending on what region you're in, but it doesn't let you get lost in like trying to find something specific. So this is a great example of like understanding what your users want to solve a business problem. Okay, so I'm actually pretty good on time. Oh, it's okay. Thanks, Alicia. Sorry, I just saw that.
Ooh, I got 2 nice rolls today.
So by now, I think we all have somewhat of an understanding of the design process, and I want to talk about what this means today. So yes, we need to understand our users, but we also need to understand that the world that they're living in, and the reality is that the world is full of injustice and inequality, and this includes design too. Design often favors more privileged user groups and neglects others. So how can we work towards more inclusive solutions? So let's start with this guy. This is Reference Man, and for decades he was and still is in many industries the standard person for which products are designed for, like cars, equipment, furniture, air conditioning, like a lot of different things. He's what many companies call their average user, who's white, he's a male, he's 30 years old, and he's 155 pounds. But like, who really fits the description of this guy? Like, I'm pretty sure all of you guys don't. Well, maybe most. Okay, yeah, like you guys don't look like him, and like I don't look like him either, because there's no such thing as an average user. And designing for a reference man or having any similar mindset just alienates more people and has serious consequences. When a woman is involved in a car crash, she is 47% more likely to be seriously injured and 71% more likely to be moderately injured. For a long time, car crash test dummies came in exclusively one size, which is kind of similar to what you just saw, the picture. Meaning there was less protection for women, children, and even like men who aren't average, like whatever average is, and also pregnant people and more. So, and it's not just test dummies either. Like in 2013, there were like reports of some women crashing their cars coming out. And in many of these cases, they took a sleeping pill the night before. And this drug, the sleeping pill, men and women were both prescribed the same amount for 8 hours of sleep. But women metabolize this drug like very differently from men. So for many of them, when they woke up in the morning, the drug was still in their system, which caused them to like not be as awake when they were driving, and so they crashed their cars. Why did this happen? Clinical test trials focused on male test subjects, and there wasn't enough female representation in the data, and they didn't consider different users separately. So what does this mean for us as designers? Question standards. Systematically, there are unfair standards set in place that we don't notice until people are hurt. And as designers, our job is to advocate for all humans, not just like the average human or the richest humans or the most powerful humans. Don't get comfortable doing things the way they've always been done, but instead look for opportunities to make things better. So being able to question our system, that's one thing. But what do we do when there's prejudice in the behavior of the users that we're designing for? We're gonna look at what happened with Airbnb in 2016. Oh, and there's Laura Murphy here. I'll talk about her later. But first, what do we like? Do we all know Airbnb? It's like a pretty big tech company. But like in case you don't know, it's an app that allows anyone to become a host and rent their homes out to people. And it also, like on the other side of that, it helps people or guests find places to stay. And so on Airbnb, if a host gets a booking request from a potential guest, but they don't want to accept the request or they need to cancel the request, they can do that because it's their own home. In 2016, Black people were 16% less likely to be accepted as guests compared to white people. So the problem with this thing that that hosts like can cancel whenever they want, it basically lets people be racist. Black people had experiences where they tried to book a place and then they were told by the owner that it wasn't available. And some people had their white friends try to book the same place for the same time, and then suddenly it became available. And some people even tried pretending to be white, like changing their profile picture and their name. And then when they did, they found that they could easily book places that were unavailable to them when they were using their actual like profile picture and name. So this is where Laura Murphy comes in. Remember her picture from like 2 slides ago? She's a civil rights attorney, and Airbnb asked her to lead the process of tackling this issue. So they pretty much did like UX research. They spent 3 months meeting with Airbnb employees, elected officials, regulatory agencies, tourism groups, civil rights organizations, and Airbnb users who had experienced discrimination to get an understanding of what was going on. And what they found was the issue is not with people being openly racist. Like, no one's gonna admit, like, no one's gonna tell you, like, yeah, I'm racist. Like everyone thinks that they're not racist. But the problem is with people's unconscious biases. So, like we talked about with Netflix, observe what people do and not just what they say. As UX designers, we have to know people, and sometimes even better than they know themselves. So we study their behavior and not just their words, and we design with these considerations in mind. So next is the phase of ideation. They asked, like, does the law apply? Like, in a hotel, you can't refuse to serve someone because of their race, like, it's a business. But these are people's private homes, so it was different. They asked, could they change the policies? Like, could they set up rules for Airbnb users to, like, don't discriminate against people? But, like, would people care about following them? Can they encourage people to use Instant Book? So what Instant Book does is it lets people place requests to book a stay without the host having to accept it. So like once a guest books a stay, they automatically have it, and then the host like doesn't approve it, so they don't really know, they don't have to know what the guest looks like. Another option, like, can we emphasize reviews over photos? Like, how can we help hosts focus more on what kind of guests that they were in the past and less about what they look like in their profile picture? So when it comes to, I guess, the prototyping phase, this is what they ended up doing in 2016. One, they added a community commitment policy, which is, I'll read it. So it says, I agree to treat everyone in the Airbnb community, regardless of race, religion, national origin, ethnicity, disability, sex, gender identity, sexual orientation, or age, with respect and without judgment or bias. So basically everyone using Airbnb has to like agree to this policy. They also made an open doors policy. So if a guest feels like they have been discriminated against, Airbnb will like go out of their way to help them find a place to stay. They also increased the availability of the Instant Book feature, and they made anti-bias training available to Airbnb users. So, okay, oops, okay. So that was in 2016. What happened? Airbnb actually released a report at the end of 2019, so like kind of recently, to let us know. So 1 million users actually denied the community commitment. So just for reference, Airbnb has about 150 million users in total. So yeah, 1 million of those users actually denied the community commitment. They didn't agree, so they weren't allowed to use Airbnb. Two, they started a permanent product team within their company to fight discrimination, and their team was working on like the app's design to help users report negative content more easily. And they also removed guest profile pictures completely from the booking process. The next thing is that nearly 70% of listings are instant book. So back in 2016, only 3% of guests use the instant book feature, but now it's almost 70%. So that's really high. And thousands of hosts completed anti-bias training. So what can we learn from this? One, focus on people. Whether it be UX design or any design, the people using your design come first. And not just most people or average people, but all people. And as designers, we have the incredible opportunity to be able to fight for the rights of people who are underrepresented. Two is finding the right problem. In the early stages of the design process, those are so important because it helps us figure out the right problem to solve. There's no use in just having like a pretty interface or a pretty screen if it doesn't help the user achieve their goal and solve their problem. Next is remember the big picture. So everything is interconnected. We're not just designing for ourselves. We're not only designing for one group of people, and we're not just designing for our design to be used in one setting. Think about like where your design fits in the world, and are there ways that it can be misused, and what part does it play in whatever problem you're trying to solve? Like, what's the impact of your design? So those are the 3 things that I hope you could take away from today if you didn't remember anything else, which I hope you did. But yeah, that's pretty much it. But also I did read a lot of the questions about how to get started in UX design, so I will pretty much just go over that now. So this is the UX UI design starter pack that I made. So one is hackathons. I actually got into UX design from going to hackathons. So MLH does a lot of really good hackathons. There are also hackathons that aren't MLH, but also if you're in high school, you can go to hackathons too. There's high school hackathons. People, of course, you need people to do any kind of design, because what are you designing for? Pen and paper. You can do a lot with just pen and paper. In fact, like it's really fast. It's a fast tool, like, to get your point across. Like even just a few drawings and you can really make a point. Yeah. Oh. Okay, sorry, I was just reading the chat. Yeah, I love going to hackathons too. Yeah, all right, Whimsical. Whimsical is really good for flowcharts and ideation. Oh, by the way, all of these things are free, I'm pretty sure. Or they have a paid plan, but they're free. But like you can use a lot of different things for flowcharts, but Whimsical is my favorite one. Figma is also my favorite for UI design and prototyping. There's a lot of things out there like Sketch, XD, Framer, way more. I've tried some of them. I do like a lot of them, but I would say that Figma is the most beginner friendly. It's also free, and a lot of startups are using it because it's also free. And even like a lot of bigger companies too, they're starting to switch over from Sketch to Figma. Also, oh yeah, if you have the Adobe Creative Suite, that's pretty good too. Like, but I just didn't put it in here because you have to pay for it, and I know, like, you know, not a lot of people want to pay for it. Dribbble, a lot of good UI inspiration. I would say Dribbble looks great for like getting like visual inspiration, but there's a reason why products in real life don't look like what you see on Dribbble, because I guess one critique that I do have about Dribbble is that like it doesn't really, like, it's just like screens that look pretty, but it might not go with like an entire system, or like if you, I don't know, like if you have text that is too long, like it doesn't account for, like, what if someone had like a really, really long name and you put it in there? Then the design would not look pretty. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Something like that. Medium, I will go over the questions very soon. But yeah, okay, Medium has a lot of really good articles. That's like my main place that I read about UX design. Yeah, Medium. Okay, books. So The Design of Everyday Things. That's a classic book. It's by Don Norman, who is also known as the father of UX. Sprint by Jake Knapp. Basically like using like a 5-day methodology to solve problems. And he's previously at Microsoft, Google. Yeah, you can read it. Okay. Oh, also, I know a lot of people were asking for free courses. So I've actually never done a free course, but, well, I've never done any of these free courses, but I was looking at some online and like these ones seem like the best ones in my opinion. So, oh yeah, like take a screenshot of it. Or if you didn't take a screenshot, I don't know, just ask me for it later or something. Communities. Oh yeah, so my friend actually shared this with me. Kelly, shout out Kelly. Designerslack.community. Basically, it's a list of like a bunch of design communities. So you can, like, some of them are invite only, and some of them you can join. And I find that design communities are like great places to like learn new things and get new resources. So that's basically a list of like a bunch of design communities. Yeah. YouTube channels, my favorite ones are Flux, Awards, and Vox. And on Instagram, there's also like a lot of like UX UI accounts, but those are my favorite ones. I'm not gonna say the names, you can read, but that's pretty much it. Thank you. And now we'll go over questions. Wow, 8:52, that's not bad. Okay. Yeah, dev post. That's a good one too. Okay, does anyone have any questions? Or I could go over your questions from, before. All right. Yeah, feel free to type out questions in the chat. But if while you guys think of questions, thanks for coming, by the way. So sorry. Yeah, thanks for coming, and thanks to Girl Genius for organizing this. You guys are actually the best. Also, I'm gonna pull up the questions though, in case there's some that I didn't answer. And also, I don't remember what I was gonna say. Oh, if you do add me on LinkedIn, sometimes I don't add people back if I don't know them. So maybe send me a message and just say like I went to the workshop or something so that I know for sure like who it is. Oh, okay. One question is, what are the best degrees to get for UX design? That's a really good question. Okay. Because yeah, I was like looking at this too because when I was like figuring out what I want to do and after I dropped out of school, I was like, I kind of want to do UX design. What do I apply to? So I feel like a lot of people in the US, they do like information systems or computer science with like a minor in human-computer interaction. Oh, psychology is also a really big one because you can understand more about how people work. Also a lot of people do like just visual design, like what is it called? Graphic design. Yeah, graphic design because a big part of UX is also UI too. UX UI. There's the UI part. I think it depends on like what you're most interested in UX because it is so broad that like there are some people who are like just UX researchers, so they might not even have any design or like visual design experience, and there are people who are just UI designers. So yeah, it depends on what you're interested in. But those things I mentioned. Also in Canada, there's like some programs called interaction design and oh, the program, I didn't even say the program that I'm going to. It's not really a UX UI course, but program, but it's called Digital Futures at OCAD, and I feel like it's more about like 3D stuff, AR, VR, and like game design. But yeah. Oh, do you have to be good at coding to attend hackathons? No. Well, okay. Actually, okay. I went to my first hackathon with like I was like very bad at coding, and actually that was how I first like found out about UX design. So like I went to my first hackathon and I expected to go there and like do coding stuff, but then I realized that I was so bad at coding. But then I learned about design and I was like, hey, this is kind of fun. But so you don't have to. Oh yeah, a lot of people are also asking, do you have to know coding to do UX design? Sorry, one sec. So I would say no, you don't have to do coding. I think it's more useful if maybe you're at a startup or you're doing more of a front end like UI role. It's definitely useful to know coding or front end programming, but you don't have to be able to do UX design. It's definitely an asset though. Like it depends on the role too. Like some roles or a lot of roles will not require coding, but some of them you might have to do it for like prototyping and stuff, especially if it's a small company. Do you need an artistic or creative background to get into UX? Yeah, so like, I mean, I feel like never mind. I feel like I kind of already answered this, but like, not really. Like, it is useful to do like visual design, especially for UI design. But if you want to do like just UX research, like you don't have to have that kind of background, but you'll probably will need to like learn some sort of visual stuff because there is like brand identity and like sometimes like yeah, there's user interface design. But I don't know. I hope that answers your question. Can you be a UX designer with a computer science degree? Yeah, I think you can. Like a lot of people in UX come from like a lot of different backgrounds. Like, yes, yeah. Also, oh yeah, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. When working in UX designing, does it involve a group's effort or is it in an individual job? You could be both. Like for example, like in a lot of big companies, you'll probably have a big team, and sometimes you might even have like a UX researcher, a UX designer, a UI designer, You might even have like an illustrator, a visual designer. Oh, you probably also have like a project manager. You have a front end. So yeah, it's definitely a group effort. But you can also do projects like by yourself. Like I know a lot of people who just did side projects on their own. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Do all hackathons require you to join a team? What if none of them want me? Aw, don't worry. Every time I go to a hackathon, or not every time, but like sometimes when I go to hackathons, I go without a team, and there's usually like there's like team forming events, and there's also like I think like one of the values of going to hackathons is you get to work in a lot of teams with people with diverse like ages and also skill sets. So like I've been in some teams with like a high school student and a person who was like 30 in the same team, and it was really fun. So and there's also like a lot of like beginners at hackathons, like they're very beginner friendly, who will like all go together and then they're like, hey, let's all do something together because we're all I don't know, we're all beginners, but I don't know. So yeah, I'm sure that people will want you. But also another thing is that some people do like solo hackathons. I've never like they're their own team. I've never done it before because I need other people. But yeah, I need other people to carry me. But that's also an option. How does industrial design fit in with UI and UX design? That's a good question. Honestly, I don't know that much about industrial design, but like one of my previous, I didn't say, I went to like a UX design bootcamp for like 3 months because I didn't have anything to do after I dropped out of school. But one of my classmates was like just graduated from OCAD in industrial design. And I remember that he was saying like, it's pretty different, but a lot of the similar concepts such as like designing for the user and like, like considering users' needs are similar. But I'm pretty sure the tools are different. Like in industrial design, you need a lot more like 3D stuff and maybe like woodworking. Okay, I don't really know about the woodworking part, but I know that OCAD has like a metal working thing, and yeah. Also, it's 9, so you can leave if you want, but I'll keep answering questions. Okay, what is the structure of a hackathon? Do they give you a design challenge? Yeah. So some hackathons give you design challenge. Like some of them have like a theme and then they have design challenges. Some other ones have like there's a bunch of different companies that like sponsor it, and so each company will sort of have their own like prize and their own theme or their own challenge. Sometimes themes are very specific, like I remember I went to one, it was like design like they give you like a specific data set too. They gave you a data set and then they were like, use this data to figure out something for the transportation. Okay, I don't know, that was really like not good, but like you know what I mean, it was very specific. And then other ones are like I went to one hackathon and the theme was like green, so or like one company's theme was green, so like you could literally do anything about like money, the environment, or you could just make your app green. Yeah, thanks for coming. Any project ideas you recommend when starting out? That's a good question. I would say maybe. Oh, okay. One thing that I see a lot of people doing is like redesigning an app, like a popular app that they find themselves like it's hard to use or they notice like any issues with it. But like one thing that I would say when people are doing this, like it's a good exercise because it helps you like design with like adhere to a brand's design system and guidelines. And but I think when I see people do this a lot, like I think one common mistake is that they try to design too much, like a whole flow. But like these companies, they have like a bunch of people, usually they have like a bunch of people like working on like so many different things. So like one person or like two people who are like just starting out like cannot like make like it that much better. Do you know what I mean? Like no offense. So I would say that if you were doing something like that, just focus on like one page or like 2 pages or like a very specific thing, and then like just test it and just go through like the process. Wow, thank you. That is so nice. Okay, did you find your UI UX bootcamp useful? Yes, I did find it useful. Honestly, I'm pretty late to I feel like I'm pretty late to UX design. So I honestly only got into it like last year, like when I was in computer science, and then I dropped out. I didn't really know about it before I went to university, so it was useful for me because I didn't really know anything about it, and then I just like spent like 40 hours a week just like doing UX for like 3 months. So in that way it was useful, but I think that like, okay, a lot of people there were like, okay, basically I was the youngest person there, right? And like everyone there was like, had like already graduated and stuff like that. So it was more meant for like, it was super useful for like getting connections and stuff, but it's heavily targeted towards people who are like already have a career or already have a degree and they're trying to make like a career change. Also, it's kind of expensive. So that on top of university, that would be a lot of money. I think that you could learn a lot of stuff yourself. But it was definitely really useful. Like I don't think I would be where I am today without going there. But you could definitely learn without going to a boot camp. I don't know if that is helpful. But yeah. Okay. I think that's all the questions. Wow. Thanks for staying. Okay, if there's any other questions that I didn't answer, then just message me. Oh, any common mistakes you see people make when deciding? That's such a good question. Okay, I would say that is a really good question. Let me think about it. I feel like, okay, one thing, this is kind of like really specific, but not following a grid. So like, a lot of the times, like if you see something and the spacing is like not that good, or like you just can't put your eye on it or whatever, but like, you know, something just doesn't look right. You're not following a grid, and like also like using a grid like makes it a lot easier to like hand off to developers and stuff, like when you're using like a spacing system. Other mistakes is, I guess like focusing to I know a really good mistake. Okay, it's not focusing on accessibility. So like there's a lot of accessibility requirements, not a lot, but like such as like if you're designing for like a mobile phone, right, you want the touch targets to be like a specific dimension. I think the minimum is like 48 by 48, and things like the amount of contrast that you need to read, like there's like a WCAG accessibility guidelines for like the contrast of things. So I think sometimes a lot of people do not take these things into consideration. Another thing is like designing things like as part of a whole. Like you might design one screen, and so like, some people get like really focused on like making this one screen so good, but like it's really important to consider like how it interacts with the rest of the product. Yeah. Okay. I think that's all. But yeah, if you have any questions, yeah, just message me. Thank you so much to Girl Genius, and thank you for organizing this, and thanks for coming.